Welcome to the Why Not podcast. This week's episode is going to be a little less formal and just a one-on-one conversation between you and I. Going to give some context and background on the Why Not podcast. When I was about 16 years old, I struggled with a lot of depression and self-doubt, suicidal thoughts. For about the last 10 years, I have been on a path and on a mission to manage and overcome the battles that I have with self-doubt and depression. Something that has helped me tremendously with that for the past 10 years or so, I guess over 10 years now, is listening to different speakers, writers, presenters that can encouraging insights and motivation. I'm a big proponent of discipline versus motivation because I've seen discipline improve my life and I've seen motivation immediately flee when things got hard. But I think there's a lot to be said for the power of listening to something that is life-giving and surrounding yourself with individuals and ideas that are encouraging and positive and supportive and uplifting. It was during a moment when I was burdened with work, with school, and had a lot going on with my two kids and just struggling with long days that anyone who is working to improve their life is familiar with, that I started to kind of question why I was doing what I was doing. It seemed to be lonely to work hard and see no progress. And I just kept asking myself, like, why? And the idea, like, Simon Sinek, start with why. Like, you want to figure out your why. I was very obsessed with that because I was unmotivated and it was hard and depressing and where I had been struggling with that for years and years and years. I was like, okay, like, what will break through this? What is going to be the change, the pivot point? And as I was thinking all of that, and really trying to navigate it, I went to a conference in last year where there were several speakers and several sessions that were super helpful. And I went there for work. It wasn't necessarily a self-improvement conference by any means, but there was one speaker specifically and where he addressed the group, and he spoke with such power and passion when his message was not to follow your passion, not to necessarily do that, but to have courage and have self-belief and to just do what you can. And so I was thinking through that. I was like, I would love to be able to do that, to stand on front of a stage and share insightful ideas and maybe motivate someone to not give up. Years prior to that, I had the opportunity to be in a public speaking course as part of my undergraduate degree, and it was really cool, really enjoyed it. As part of our final project for that, we were supposed to give an object lesson type of speech where we utilized something physical as an element of our speech. It was a really cool class where we had a challenge like that every week. And this was one of the concluding weeks for that semester. Well, I used that opportunity to share my struggles with depression and some of the lessons and insights I've learned that have helped me manage that some better than others. And at the end of that speaking engagement, I had someone slip me a note, and I don't remember who they are. And to this day, I don't remember their name, but I remember the note because I still have it, even though this was over 5 years ago easily. It left an impact because in that note, essentially what they said was they were planning on ending their life that day. They had started that day with some serious emotions and really hard things that they were going through. And they were vulnerable enough to share this with me in that note. And they said, because of the speech that I shared, they had enough hope to not go through with that day. And of course, that was one of the last days of that class. And I wish I could give an update on where that individual is at in their life. But it left an impact on me because I recognized that I could actually directly influence those around me who may also be struggling with their similar or completely different battles in that sense. So fast forward from that moment to last year when I'm in this conference listening to the speaker and being like, man, I would love to do that, but like, why would anyone want to listen to anything I have to say? And this thought just kept coming to mind. It's like, well, why not? Jim Rohn is one of those speakers I mentioned earlier that I would listen to when I was really depressed. Les Brown and others. But something that Jim Rohn says is, instead of asking why, you should ask the more important and more powerful and more potent question, which is why not? Why not you? Why not you? Making the advancements that you want, achieving what you're hoping to achieve, building the relationships you need, having and crafting and building the legacy you want to leave. Like, why not? And as I was thinking about that, I was like, wow, like that applies to things like innovation, things like career, things like fatherhood, every element of my life. I was like, I'm going to start investigating and looking into this idea of like, why not? And I immediately thought of individuals in my life, in my network, in my career, who had demonstrated a level of self-belief, a level of courage and grit that I had seen firsthand, or I at least had met them after they had gone through a challenging time and emerged the victor. And I was like, I should ask them some questions and really get their insight. And as I started doing that and started having some of those conversations, asking some of those questions, I was like, well, you know, a big motivation for me is leaving information and a legacy and something for my kids. Like, I should record these conversations and in so doing, hopefully benefit others and maybe some people that I don't even know, as well as my own journey of figuring out like, why not? Like how do you overcome that question of why and start asking why not? How do you overcome that self-doubt essentially? And that's really what this podcast has become. That's why I called it the Why Not Podcast. It's why I've brought on the guests that I have for the last year and a half. And I've been motivated by this idea that, sure, like I'm not really trying to become like an influencer, but like 3 episodes of a podcast is better than 0, right? Like 1 is better than 0. Something done is better than nothing. The perfect, huge success of a campaign that is never launched is far inferior to the mediocre campaign that does pretty good that actually happened. The perfect book that's never written isn't as good as the average story that's actually published and people read. Like, it's just how I've been able to navigate through life is like, all right, instead of being a perfectionist and never doing shit with my life, I'm just going to do it. Like, why not? And for me, that has been so healing and so helpful. And I've been able to bring in other people on this show that have provided that insight from their own lives of figuring things out and taking that action. And so that's the point of this show. I'm going to continue to meet with guests and have meaningful conversations with them. And I'm going to start asking them, why not? Why not you? Why not them? Why not? If you have a story you want to share, if you have a question you want to ask either a specific guest or just any guest, I've added a form to the page for this podcast that I'll include in the link in this episode in the description, where you can submit those to me, send those on over, those questions or those recommended guests, or if you have a story you'd like to share. Because I'm going to be really focusing more on highlighting individuals and stories and questions that help us stop asking why. Like, why would anyone want to listen to me, or why would I be able to achieve what I want to achieve? And start asking why not instead. It's like, well, why not? Like, just do it. So, yeah, super short episode this week. I just wanted to give more context in terms of what I'm doing here on this podcast, in terms of the guests that I bring on, and why this is so meaningful to me, whether or not it gains popularity. So I appreciate you for listening. I appreciate your support, and I hope that you will take the time to send over some questions that you would like to have included in the future episodes that I share. So instead of asking yourself why, ask yourself why not, and have a spectacular, wonderful Friday and head into a productive and meaningful weekend. Thank you.